What if I told you that the version of truth you've been handed for centuries was edited, cut apart, and rewritten, not to free your mind, but to chain it? What if the oldest Bible on earth, the Ethiopian Bible, preserved the very teachings of Christ that the world was never meant to see? For 4,000 years, men have twisted divine law into a tool of obedience, not liberation. They took the words of the Master and stripped them of their power, hiding the truth that man was never meant to serve fear, nor bow before institutions, nor crawl in submission to the illusions of authority. The truth that was buried is this: Jesus did not come to create worshipers. He came to awaken creators. His message was not about suffering for heaven, but about mastering heaven within. He did not teach the weak to beg. He taught the strong to command. And that teaching, my friend, was dangerous, because a man who knows his oneness with infinite intelligence cannot be ruled. He cannot be bought or bribed or broken. He does not wait for miracles. He makes them. And that is why the true doctrine had to be hidden, rewritten, and buried beneath centuries of translation and fear. The Ethiopian scriptures predate your Bible. They contain books removed by kings, burned by popes, and erased by scribes, books that spoke of man's direct communion with the infinite, of his power to think his reality into being, of his mind as the true temple of God. Do you understand what that means? It means the kingdom of heaven was never in the sky. It was in your own thought. For 4,000 years, the world has been ruled not by truth, but by fear. The same fear I wrote about when I said, fear is the tool of a man-made devil. That devil is ignorance clothed in religion, whispering that you are powerless, that salvation is bought through submission. Yet the Master said otherwise. The kingdom of God is within you. Think of it. Every empire, every priesthood, every institution that ever profited from your fear has built its throne upon the denial of that single law, that man and his Maker are not separate, that the mind of man is a spark of the infinite, that every thought of faith is a command to the universe itself. And I tell you now, if you truly understood what those lost scriptures contained, you would never again ask another man for permission to prosper. You would never again kneel before doubt. You would never again beg the world to give you what heaven already placed within your grasp. The Ethiopian Bible does not flatter the powerful. It exalts the individual. It speaks of divine law not as a mystery to be obeyed, but as a science to be practiced. It teaches that faith is not submission. It is control. That prayer is not pleading. It is mental direction. That sin is not moral failure. It is ignorance of one's own creative power. Now, do you see why the rulers feared it? A free man cannot be taxed by fear. A thinker cannot be enslaved by lies. A believer who knows his mind is the workshop of the infinite cannot be ruled by the threats of hell or the promise of heaven. He commands both. You have lived long enough in a world that told you to be humble, to be small, to wait for permission. You were taught to believe that holiness meant poverty, that devotion meant obedience, that suffering was sacred. But the truth is this: to think, to act, to decide, to create, these are the true acts of worship. The Ethiopian Bible preserves the message that every man carries within him the image of the Creator, and that to think in harmony with that image is to perform miracles. It is the same law I have taught for decades, that what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But the world would rather you forget. The world would rather you remain a drifter, bound by fear, confusion, and doubt, instead of standing upright in your divine inheritance. For if you remembered, if you truly awakened to this truth, their kingdoms would crumble overnight. Understand this clearly. Jesus did not teach followers. He built thinkers. He taught the science of faith, how to plant a thought, water it with belief, and watch it become flesh. He showed man that the word spoken with conviction is the law of life, that the man who controls his mind controls his destiny. The Ethiopian scriptures declare it plainly, that man is not punished for his sins, but by them, that heaven and hell are not places, but states of mind, that the kingdom is not found by searching the sky, but by mastering one's own thought. And these truths were too powerful to survive unguarded. So the world was given a half-truth, a gospel of fear instead of faith, a creed of submission instead of creation. The fire of the mind was buried beneath rituals, politics, and dogma until now. But the truth cannot die. It returns in every age, disguised as a whisper in the hearts of those who dare to think. Listen closely. Every man who ever achieved greatness, Ford, Edison, Carnegie, obeyed the same law the Ethiopian Bible concealed, that the thought of faith transforms circumstance. That man, united with his purpose, becomes a channel of the divine. And the moment he decides, heaven moves. You are about to hear what the world has feared for 4,000 years, that faith is not blind belief, but deliberate creation, that God does not choose favorites, but obeys law, that your destiny is not written in the stars, but in the words you speak daily to yourself. This speech is not for the faint of heart. It is for those who are ready to reclaim what has been stolen from them, their power, their faith, their divine birthright. I will not give you religion. I will give you law, the law that Jesus practiced, that the sages preserved, that the conquerors erased, and that the Ethiopian Bible still proclaims. The kingdom of God is within you, and thought is its throne. So listen well, for these words may shake the foundation of everything you were taught to believe. They may offend the timid, they may enrage the blind, but they will set the thinker free. For the next few moments, put aside everything you think you know about faith, religion, and salvation. The truth has slept long enough. It is time to wake it within you. There is a kingdom not made by hands. It cannot be found in the sky, nor buried in the earth. It is not hidden in temples, nor guarded by priests. It lives within the walls of thought itself. It is the kingdom of heaven, and it begins in the mind of man. Heaven and hell are not places to which men travel after death. They are conditions of consciousness in which men dwell while alive. Heaven is mental harmony. Hell is mental confusion. Heaven is faith organized into purpose. Hell is fear turned inward until it poisons the soul. The Ethiopian scriptures preserved this truth long before it was spoken in parable. They declared that the mind is the workshop of God. And centuries later, I too came upon that same law in my confrontation with the devil, the realization that every joy or torment of man is born from his own thought. In that timeless dialogue, the adversary confessed his dwelling place. He said, I live in the minds of men who fear me. Thus I learned that the devil is not a red figure with horns, but the negative use of imagination. The devil is the picture one paints of failure, of sickness, of loss, and then believes it into form. The devil is man's own misuse of thought, and the only exorcism needed is the deliberate act of thinking rightly. The true battlefield of good and evil is not in the world of men. It is in the inner chamber of the human mind. Every war that has ever been fought was first fought in thought. Every prison built by tyrants was first built within the minds of those who believed themselves powerless. And every victory ever won was first won by one who dared to govern his own thinking. When Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, he was not speaking of clouds or golden streets. He was describing a state of consciousness, a mind so disciplined, so pure in purpose, that no fear, doubt, or indecision could disturb its peace. The Ethiopian writings preserve the same code, declaring that the spirit of man is the throne of God. I came to understand that this throne is the calm, centered mind that refuses to be ruled by circumstance. There is no external devil. There is only ungoverned imagination, thought left to wander without definite aim. The devil feeds on vagueness, on the gray mist of indecision. He thrives where men drift between belief and fear, between desire and doubt. When the mind is disciplined, when thought is definite, the devil starves. The greatest tragedy of mankind is not that men die, but that they live without governing their own minds. For centuries, organized fear has replaced spiritual law. Men were taught to bow rather than to think. They were told that salvation comes through obedience to dogma, not through mastery of self. Thus they traded the power to create for the comfort of servitude. Every age has seen the same conspiracy of ignorance, a hidden league of fear that keeps men bound to limitation. The priests of fear have many names. Some wear robes, others wear crowns, and many hold offices of respectability. They whisper the same command, "Do not think for yourself." And thus the great power given to man, the power to think his destiny into form, has been buried beneath centuries of superstition. I have seen how this slavery of the mind begins. First, man doubts his own thought. Then he seeks authority outside himself. At last, he becomes a beggar at the gates of heaven, pleading for what he has the power to create. This is the secret tragedy of human history. The law was never lost, only forgotten. And it has been written again and again in every sacred book. As a man thinketh, so is he. Faith, then, is not blind belief in unseen hands. It is the calm confidence of a mind in order. Faith is thought organized toward a definite end. When thought is definite, it moves the unseen forces of life into motion. When thought is chaotic, it destroys itself. Heaven is the state of a mind directed by faith. Hell is the torment of a mind ruled by fear. Fear is the only devil there ever was. It is the shadow cast by ignorance. It whispers that man is small, that he must bow, that he is at the mercy of fate. Yet fate itself is but the accumulated result of his own thinking. There is no fate for the thinker, only consequence. Consider Henry Ford, that humble mechanic who found the kingdom within. The world laughed at him. They said his vision of a motor car for every man was madness. Yet he held his thought as firmly as a sculptor holds the form in his mind before he carves it from stone. He refused to drift, refused to fear, refused to accept impossibility. And in so doing, he proved that the kingdom of heaven is not reached through prayer alone, but through the definite act of mind united with purpose. Ford found harmony within, and the outer world reshaped itself to match his vision. This same law that lifted Ford from obscurity lies within every man. Heaven is built each morning when thought obeys purpose. Hell is built each night when fear is allowed to reign. No tyrant can imprison a man who governs his thoughts. No poverty can enslave a soul that knows its own power. The gates of heaven open not through death, but through decision. The decision to think constructively, deliberately, and persistently toward one definite aim. The Ethiopian sages declared, "Guard thy thought, for it is the seed of thy world." How few obey this. The multitude allows their minds to become gardens overrun with weeds of fear, gossip, and indecision. Then they cry out that life is cruel, that fate has betrayed them, that heaven is far away. But heaven was never lost, it was neglected. The mind left unattended becomes a wilderness of torment. The devil does not need to steal a man's soul. He only needs to distract his thought. He works through worry, through envy, through resentment, through the 1,000 little irritations that weaken mental discipline. Each moment spent in fear or doubt is a brick laid in the walls of hell. Each moment spent in faith and purpose is a stone added to the temple of heaven. The Ethiopian manuscripts speak of a law called tefersat, the alignment of inner and outer. It teaches that the outer world mirrors the inner order of thought. When man's thought is divided, his world is divided. When his thought is one with purpose, his world obeys him. This is the law of harmony that binds heaven and earth. When I wrote Outwitting the Devil, I did not reveal a new truth. I uncovered the old one. I showed that the devil is thought misused, fear organized into habit, and I showed that heaven is thought rightly used, faith organized into purpose. I saw that Jesus, centuries before, had already taught this law in the simple command, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." The renewal of the mind is the rebirth of heaven. Every man is a builder. Each day he draws blueprints in thought, and each night the unseen hands of law build from those plans. Some construct palaces of peace. Others raise prisons of despair. Each receives according to the pattern he has drawn. In my own life, I have known both states. I have lived in the hell of confusion and the heaven of purpose. There was a time when fear held me in chains, when every plan I formed crumbled because my thought was divided. But when I learned to fix my mind upon one definite purpose and to hold it there, the chains fell away. The same law that had bound me now served me. Heaven and hell had been two conditions of my own mind. Man prays for deliverance from evil, yet he is delivered the moment he learns to think. The mind, like a compass, always points toward harmony when it is not interfered with. But fear, doubt, and indecision pull its needle from the true north of faith. The first act of salvation, therefore, is mental stillness. The command to thought, "Peace, be still." The Ethiopian sages said that the voice of God speaks only in silence. This silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of fear. When the mind is silent, it hears direction. When it is noisy with worry and desire, it hears only confusion. The devil dwells in noise. God speaks in calmness. There is no need to destroy evil. It destroys itself when ignored. There is no need to chase heaven. It appears when the mind becomes orderly. Man's task is not to beg for miracles, but to create them through disciplined imagination. For the universe obeys thought as faithfully as the soil obeys seed. The great secret hidden in both the Ethiopian scrolls and in my dialogue with the devil is this: man is the builder of heaven through the instrument of his mind. When thought is pure, heaven appears. When thought is chaotic, hell arises. The scriptures of every nation have whispered this in different tongues, yet men have chosen fear over understanding. The priests of fear taught that God rewards obedience and punishes inquiry, but truth rewards inquiry and punishes ignorance. The mind was given not to serve fear, but to command it. Every time a man refuses to think for himself, he hands the keys of heaven to the devil of doubt. In the hidden Gospels preserved in Ethiopia, Christ is recorded saying, "The lamp of the body is the mind. If it be clear, thy whole body shall be full of light." Here lies the identical law I revealed. Control the lamp of thought, and all life is illuminated. Let fear darken it, and all things appear distorted. There is no distant heaven waiting beyond the grave. There is the heaven of self-mastery now. There is no fiery hell below the earth. There is the hell of a mind on fire with worry, hate, and envy. Men have waited for angels to descend, but angels are thoughts of faith. They come not from above, but from within. Faith, when rightly understood, is not hope. Hope waits. Faith acts. Faith is not blind. It sees with inner vision. Faith is not sentiment. It is discipline. The man of faith knows that the invisible is the cause of the visible, and he governs his thoughts accordingly. The law is perfect and impartial. Whatever you plant in mind, you will meet and experience. If you sow fear, you will reap defeat. If you sow definiteness, you will reap mastery. The soil of the subconscious never rests. It grows weeds or wheat with equal faithfulness. Therefore, the first duty of man is mental cultivation, to keep his garden clear of the weeds of fear, and to plant daily the seeds of purpose. This is not poetry. It is exact science. Every result in your life is the harvest of some thought previously planted. The Ethiopian master wrote, "He who guards his mind guards his destiny." This is the lost commandment of every faith. Heaven is not attained through ritual, but through rhythm, the steady rhythm of disciplined thinking. When one learns this law, he ceases to fear the devil, for he knows that the devil is only the absence of definiteness. He ceases to fear hell, for he knows that hell is the absence of faith. And he ceases to fear death, for he knows that life eternal is thought aligned with divine law. So let this be your affirmation. My mind is the throne of heaven. No fear may reign within it. Repeat it until you believe it. Speak it until your subconscious accepts it as law. For as you affirm, so shall you become. You are not a victim of fate. You are the architect of destiny. You are not a beggar of heaven. You are its builder. The mind is the workshop of God, and you are his apprentice. To think rightly is to create rightly. To fear is to destroy. Remember this. There is no greater power than the calm, deliberate thought of one who knows his own mind. One such man is stronger than 1,000 who drift. When thought is definite, heaven appears wherever he stands. The Ethiopian sages and I spoke the same truth in different tongues, that the kingdom of God is not a place but a power, not a promise but a principle, not a reward but a realization. The law is simple and it is eternal. As you think, so shall you live. There is an invisible empire that rules men without their consent. It has no army, no throne, and no crown. Its palace is built in the imagination of those who tremble before shadows. This empire is called fear, and it is the oldest form of government in the world. Kings have come and gone, nations have risen and fallen, but fear remains the eternal ruler of those who refuse to think for themselves. When I conversed with the devil, he confessed his only weapon. He said, "I control men through fear." And when I pressed him, asking of what men are afraid, he named 6 ghosts that haunt the earth: the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. These 6 specters are his ministers of state, through which he commands the minds of the weak. Look carefully at them. They are nothing but ideas, phantoms without form. Yet they have governed nations, destroyed empires, and bound men more completely than iron chains. For no prison is as cruel as the one built of a man's own beliefs. The fear of poverty keeps millions in quiet slavery, toiling without purpose, obeying masters they despise, all because they are afraid to think independently. The fear of criticism silences genius before it speaks. It makes men live by the opinions of others, never daring to be different. The fear of ill health fills hospitals with the well and poisons the body through suggestion. The fear of loss of love makes beggars of lovers, trading dignity for approval. The fear of old age steals joy from the young and peace from the old. And the fear of death, the oldest of all lies, keeps men trembling before the inevitable, never realizing that death is but the gateway between states of consciousness. Every one of these fears is a lie whispered to the mind until the mind believes it. The devil's greatest triumph is not in destruction, but in deception. He persuades man that he is powerless. He convinces him that life is ruled by chance, that destiny is a cruel master, and that he must accept what comes. Once a man accepts that lie, the devil needs no chains. The man will guard his own prison. The Ethiopian scriptures speak of this tyranny. They tell of an age when priests and kings conspired to control the minds of the people through fear. They discovered that a frightened man will bow before any authority that promises safety. So they filled the world with forbidden laws, invisible curses, and unseen punishments. They told men that to question was sin, that to think was rebellion, and that to seek power was pride. And thus they turned the gift of reason into a cause of guilt. The rulers of that time knew what I later discovered, that the man who thinks for himself cannot be ruled by another. To enslave him, it is enough to teach him to doubt his own thought. Once he is afraid of being wrong, he will seek the approval of others for every act. And when he does this, he ceases to live by truth and begins to live by permission. The devil's government has no parliament. It rules through suggestion. Its laws are written in the subconscious of the masses. Every whisper of doubt, every superstition, every fear of what they might say is a tax upon the soul. Men have built cathedrals of fear, decorated them with holy names, and worshiped there for centuries. Jesus came to overthrow that empire. His command was simple: be not afraid. He said it again and again, for he knew that fear was the only real enemy of man. He healed the sick not by miracle, but by restoring their faith. He lifted the poor not by charity, but by awakening their belief in the kingdom within. And he defied the priests and rulers who traded in terror, saying that truth shall make men free. Yet the world crucified him, not because he was wrong, but because he was dangerous. He threatened the commerce of fear. He exposed the hidden market in which souls were sold to superstition. For when a man loses fear, no tyrant can profit from him. The Ethiopian text preserved his true message, that salvation is freedom from fear through understanding. They spoke of a mind that, when illumined by faith, becomes untouchable. He who dwells in the light, they wrote, walks unharmed through the valley of the shadow. It was this same law I uncovered when I made the devil admit that he could control no mind that had a definite purpose. Purpose is the armor of the soul. Decision is its sword. A man who knows what he wants cannot be ruled by fear, for fear feeds only on hesitation. Every time you decide, you strike a blow at the empire of the devil. Every time you postpone, you pay him tribute. How subtle this tyranny has become. It hides behind respectability, behind custom, behind education. The child is taught early to be afraid, afraid to fail, afraid to offend, afraid to stand alone. He learns to measure himself by others, to conform, to obey. And so the creative fire within him is smothered before it burns its brightest. By the time he is grown, his imagination, that divine faculty through which man communes with infinite intelligence, has been shackled by caution and conditioned by fear. This, too, is the devil's masterpiece. He has made fear appear as wisdom, and faith appear as folly. He whispers to the ambitious, "Be careful." He tells the dreamer, "It cannot be done." He tells the poor, "You were not born to be rich." He tells the sick, "This is your fate." And men, believing these lies, surrender the scepter of their thought. The result is a world where the brave are few and the cautious are many. A world where the majority drift in quiet despair, waiting for a miracle that will never come, because miracles are not granted to those who fear to act. Fear is not sin, yet it is the soil from which all sin grows. It is ignorance in disguise, ignorance of the law of mind. For once a man understands that thought creates form, that faith governs energy, and that decision directs destiny, he cannot fear. To fear is to forget the law. To remember the law is to destroy fear. I have seen the power of this understanding in my own life. There was a time when I, too, was enslaved by the 6 ghosts. I feared poverty. I feared criticism. I feared the opinions of others. My days were filled with hesitation and my nights with worry. I prayed for courage, yet my prayers were empty because they were offered in doubt. One night when despair had nearly conquered me, I asked myself a question that changed everything. What if fear is nothing but a state of mind? If it was a state of mind, then it could be changed. If it was created by thought, then thought could uncreate it. I decided to test this. I began to act as though I had no fear, to speak with confidence, to plan boldly, to believe in my purpose even when my reason protested. At first, the old ghosts returned, whispering their doubts, but each time I refused to listen, they grew weaker. One by one, they vanished until only faith remained. And with that faith came the first real freedom I had ever known. The Ethiopian teachers called this the second birth. It is not the birth of the body, but the birth of dominion, when a man learns that fear has no substance except what he gives it. From that day, I understood that the devil can only rule by consent, and that consent is withdrawn the moment one thinks independently. Look again at the 6 fears, and you will see how they form the pillars of the devil's kingdom. The fear of poverty makes slaves of workers and cowards of thinkers. The fear of criticism makes nations march to ruin, each afraid to contradict the loudest voice. The fear of ill health creates sickness through imagination, for the body obeys belief as faithfully as the soil obeys seed. The fear of loss of love breeds jealousy and possession, destroying the very thing it seeks to preserve. The fear of old age steals the strength of the young before their time, as they worship youth and despise wisdom. And the fear of death makes life itself a long rehearsal for dying. All these fears vanish in the presence of understanding. Poverty loses its terror when one learns that riches begin in thought. Criticism becomes harmless when one decides to please only his own conscience. Ill health dissolves when the mind ceases to picture disease. Loss of love cannot wound the one who loves without fear. Old age becomes a crown when seen as harvest, not decay. And death itself becomes an awakening when one realizes that consciousness cannot die. The devil's government is maintained through ignorance, and ignorance is maintained through authority. Those who rule by fear do not fear the strong, they fear the thinker. That is why the first act of every tyranny is to limit education, to ridicule faith, and to exalt dependence. They know that the man who understands his mind cannot be manipulated. Abraham Lincoln understood this law. His courage was not born of absence of danger, but of presence of purpose. When the nation trembled and armies fell, he said simply, "I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true." In that moment, he demonstrated mastery over fear. He knew that fear is a liar, and that the man who stands by a principle cannot be defeated even by death. His faith in justice was his armor. His decision was his sword. It is not necessary to fight fear directly. It dies of starvation when ignored. The remedy is always the same. Replace it with definite purpose. Every moment spent defining your purpose weakens the devil's hold. Every plan made in faith drives another nail into the coffin of doubt. Fear flees before decision as darkness flees before dawn. The Ethiopian scrolls speak of a divine formula. Knowledge plus faith equals power. This is the antidote to all fear. Knowledge without faith produces cynicism. Faith without knowledge produces superstition. But when knowledge and faith unite, man becomes invincible. The mind that thinks in faith connects with infinite intelligence. It draws ideas from the unseen, strength from the eternal, and courage from the divine. Fear cannot enter such a mind, for it finds no vacancy there. That mind radiates harmony, and all lesser vibrations dissolve in its presence. It is ignorance, not sin, that makes man tremble. To banish fear, therefore, is not an act of rebellion, but of understanding. The man who outwits the devil is simply one who has learned to think. Let this truth burn within you. Fear is not real. It is only the shadow of forgotten faith. The moment you remember who you are, a thinking, creating expression of infinite intelligence, the shadow vanishes. No man can be enslaved who has mastered the law of mind. You are not bound by the world's opinions. You are not limited by circumstance. You are bound only by the pictures you hold in your imagination. Change the picture, and life changes with it. Remember this affirmation and repeat it daily until it becomes your nature. I think in faith, and fear dissolves before my decision. Speak it when you awaken. Speak it when doubt whispers. Speak it until fear becomes a stranger. For every time you affirm faith, you withdraw power from the devil's invisible government. The empires of fear rise and fall, but the law of mind endures. The one who knows this law walks among men like a beacon in darkness. He fears nothing, for he understands everything. He serves no master, for he governs himself. He does not seek heaven elsewhere, for he carries heaven within. The world may call him strange, reckless, even proud, but history will call him free. Every great failure begins the same way, not with a single wrong act, but with the slow surrender of thought. A man ceases to decide for himself. He lets habit, gossip, and fear decide in his place. He allows the hours to pass without direction, the days to move without purpose, the years to unfold without plan. He drifts. And drifting, more than sin or weakness or ignorance, is the devil's masterpiece. When I demanded of the devil how he gained control over the majority of men, he smiled and said, "By causing them to drift." It is the subtle art of making a mind aimless, of keeping it busy but fruitless, full of movement but without progress. The drifter wakes each morning and repeats yesterday. He moves but does not advance. He wishes but does not decide. He spends his life reacting instead of creating. And when the end comes, he wonders why heaven never answered his prayers. Heaven answered every one of them, but he had no definite address. To drift is to live as a leaf upon the wind, carried wherever the breeze of circumstance blows. A man who drifts cannot think for long on one subject. His attention leaps from fear to desire, from pleasure to worry, from one half-formed plan to another. The devil delights in such minds, for they are open houses. Anyone may enter, and the master is never home. The Ethiopian scriptures called this state the sleep of the soul. They warned that the first duty of man is to stay awake. not merely with eyes open, but with thought vigilant. Keep the lamp burning, they wrote, for the night is long and the thief walks in darkness. The thief is not a demon from without, but distraction from within. Every idle thought, every aimless hour, every postponed decision is another drop of oil wasted from the lamp of purpose. Drifting is not always born of laziness. Often it masquerades as virtue. The man who says, I am waiting for a sign, the one who says, I am taking my time, or I will act when the right moment comes, these are drifters disguised as philosophers. The truth is that the right moment never arrives. It must be created. The universe moves only when a mind commands it. The idle wait for inspiration, the definite create it. Look at the world and you will see the proof. The masses drift. They follow fashions, repeat slogans, obey trends, fear opinion. They eat what others eat, think what others think, and desire what others are told to desire. Their lives are ruled by news, gossip, and envy, yet they wonder why they feel powerless. They have given their thought to the crowd. The crowd has given it to fear, and fear has given it to the devil. Only a few refuse to drift, the thinkers, the dreamers, the men and women who choose their own direction and follow it with persistence. They are God's chosen instruments, for through them the divine plan finds expression. The rest are like instruments lying silent on the floor waiting for someone else to play their music. Andrew Carnegie was such an instrument. He began with nothing but a purpose so definite that it burned through every obstacle. He decided that he would master steel, not hope, not try, not wish. Decided. He fixed his thought like a compass needle and never permitted it to waver. Fortune could not resist such definiteness. From that decision grew an empire and the employment of millions. The devil had no power over him, for the devil cannot tempt a man who is already chosen. Thomas Edison was another. When the world called him a fool for chasing light from a filament, he smiled and worked. He failed hundreds of times, yet never drifted from his vision. His faith was not a prayer for luck, but a discipline of thought. Every hour of his life was organized around his definite purpose. To one who asked how he endured so many failures, he said, I did not fail. I discovered 1,000 ways that did not work. That is the creed of the non-drifter. George Washington stood in the winter at Valley Forge with no food for his soldiers, no shoes for their feet, and the cause of liberty hanging by a thread. Yet he never surrendered to despair. His mind was anchored in purpose, and that purpose drew strength from the unseen. The armies of the world could not move him because fear could not enter him. He held one idea, freedom, until the universe itself conspired to make it real. The non-drifter is not born. He is made through discipline. He trains his thought as a general trains an army. Every idea must obey command. Every emotion must serve strategy. He allows no idle thinking, for he knows that thought is creative and will reproduce whatever he allows. He guards his mind as a fortress, admitting only those ideas that strengthen faith, courage, and purpose. Drifting, by contrast, is mental anarchy. It is thought without leadership. It is the inner government overthrown by its own citizens. The drifter has no schedule, no plan, no chief aim. He spends more time doubting than doing, more time excusing than executing. He reads but never applies. He prays but never acts. He talks of what he might do, yet the years pass and nothing is done. The devil laughs, for such a man requires no temptation. He tempts himself. In Outwitting the Devil, I asked the adversary what percentage of men he controlled. His answer was terrifying, 98 out of 100. When I pressed for the reason, he said simply, they drift. Only 2 out of 100 think for themselves, decide for themselves, and act from their own convictions. These 2 create civilization. The rest follow. But there is hope, for drifting can be reversed the instant one decides. The cure is as swift as the disease is slow. A single definite purpose, held with faith and acted upon with persistence, will awaken the sleeping soul and cast the devil out of the mind. The transformation is as certain as the sunrise, for the law of non-drifting is a spiritual law. Thought held firmly in one direction gathers power from the infinite. The Ethiopian teachers described this law as the straight path. They taught that to walk it is salvation, to wander from it is death. He who keeps his face toward the light, they said, shall not stumble in darkness. To keep one's face toward the light is to maintain attention upon purpose. It does not mean struggle or tension, it means consistency. The sun does not hurry, yet all life follows its course. So too must a man move in steady rhythm toward his chosen aim. Why then do the masses drift? Because drifting is easy. It demands nothing of courage, nothing of faith, nothing of effort. The mind, like water, always seeks the lowest level. To rise requires energy. To drift requires none. The drifter mistakes comfort for peace, routine for security, and conformity for wisdom. He avoids the pain of decision, not realizing that indecision is the greatest pain of all, the slow torment of a life unused. Organized religion at times has aided this disease. Too often it has told men to wait upon divine will instead of to act as divine instruments. It has encouraged passive obedience instead of active creation. It has taught that to be humble is to be weak, and that ambition is sin. And so, in the name of holiness, men have been taught to drift, waiting for signs, for permission, for rescue. Yet the scriptures themselves declare that man is made in the image of God. And what is that image if not creative power? The Ethiopian gospel warned, God works through the hands of the awake. The asleep pray for deliverance. The awake become it. The asleep seek heaven. The awake build it. The asleep wait for miracles. The awake create them by law. Every man must choose which he will be. To prevent drifting, one must first fix a definite chief aim. This aim must be written, spoken, and visualized until it becomes the central sun around which all thought revolves. It need not be grand, it must be clear. The farmer who decides to raise the best crop in his valley, the craftsman who decides to master his trade, the mother who decides to raise strong children, each is practicing the law of non-drifting. Next comes organized planning. The plan is the bridge between thought and action. Without it, purpose remains a dream. The drifter may say, I wish to succeed, but he has no chart, no map, no timetable. The non-drifter builds his plan as an architect builds a temple, with care, with patience, with exact design. Then he executes it daily, adjusting but never abandoning. The third protection is persistence. The devil flees before persistence as darkness flees before dawn. He can frighten the weak, discourage the impatient, and deceive the careless, but he cannot endure the steady hand of one who keeps moving forward. Every defeat, every delay, every failure becomes fuel for the one who refuses to stop. The fourth is decision. Indecision is the mother of drifting. The habit of quick, definite choice is the mark of every successful soul. The drifter says, I will think about it. The master says, I will do it. One postpones, the other acts. One dreams, the other builds. One drifts into the devil's current, the other steers his own ship. The fifth is self-discipline. The mind, like a wild horse, must be trained before it can serve. The drifter lets every emotion lead him. Anger, envy, appetite, desire. The master reins them all to purpose. He eats, sleeps, speaks, and works by intention, not impulse. He is not a slave to circumstance because he is not a slave to himself. The sixth is faith. Without faith, all else collapses. Faith is the invisible bridge that carries thought across the chasm of doubt into the land of achievement. It is not blind. It sees with inner vision. It is not hope. It is knowledge of law. The man of faith does not drift because he knows that every cause produces its effect, and that no effort, rightly directed, can fail in the end. The seventh is the habit of going the extra mile. This law breaks the chains of mediocrity. The drifter does only what he must. The master does more than is required. He sows beyond his field, and life repays him in kind. Each extra mile traveled strengthens definiteness and weakens the devil's hold. These 7 traits form the armor of the non-drifter: definite purpose, organized plan, persistence, decision, self-discipline, faith, and the habit of going the extra mile. Clothed in these, a man walks untouched through the fires of temptation. Understand this clearly. Drifting is not a habit of the poor alone. It afflicts kings and scholars alike. Any mind left unguarded becomes its victim. The scientist who loses faith in his discovery, the artist who doubts his vision, the leader who listens too long to fear, all drift the moment they let go of their purpose. The Ethiopian texts tell of a parable, a captain sailing without compass. The winds of chance drove him far from his course until he cried out, "The sea is cursed." But the wise said, "The sea is not cursed. You have no helm." So it is with life. The sea of circumstance is neutral. It obeys the rudder of thought. Drifting is not the fault of the sea, but the absence of a helm. In every century, men who refuse to drift have carried civilization forward. They are few, yet the world lives by their faith. The roads we travel, the machines we use, the freedoms we enjoy, all were created by minds that thought definitively and refused to yield. The drifters consume what the thinkers produce. The thinkers are the builders of heaven on earth. The moral cost of indecision is greater than the material one. Each time a man hesitates, he wounds his soul. He feels smaller, weaker, less certain of himself. The habit of indecision breeds self-contempt. Soon he no longer believes in his own power, and once that belief dies, he becomes a puppet of circumstance. The devil then no longer needs to tempt him. He guides him by strings of doubt. The cure again is decision, even small ones. Choose your words, your friends, your hours, your thoughts. Choose what you will study, what you will ignore, what you will believe. Choice is the muscle of the soul. It grows strong through use and weak through neglect. The man who practices non-drifting discovers a strange peace. He no longer fears the future because he is building it. He no longer resents the past because he has learned from it. He no longer envies others because he is too busy creating his own destiny. His mind is clear, his emotions steady, his body vibrant, his conscience quiet. This is salvation, the mind in harmony with itself. The devil cannot enter such a mind. His entire kingdom collapses where definiteness reigns. He feeds on indecision, and when that food is gone, he dies of hunger. Every time a man says, "I will," with conviction, a devil dies somewhere in the invisible. Therefore, let this be your affirmation. I choose my thought each hour. I am not the puppet of circumstance. Speak it until it becomes rhythm, until your every act begins with conscious choice. For each chosen thought is a step on the path of mastery, and each unchosen one a slide into drift. When you wake in the morning, ask, "What is my purpose today?" When you retire at night, ask, "Did I hold to it?" Let this simple discipline govern your hours, and soon it will govern your destiny. Drifting is the slow death of the soul. Non-drifting is its resurrection. And he who practices it daily will find that he walks not beside angels, but among them, for his own disciplined mind has become one. In the beginning there was not light, nor sound, nor form. There was thought, and from that thought came the command, "Let there be light." The universe did not argue nor hesitate, it obeyed. This is the first and eternal revelation of law. Thought is dominion. Every blade of grass, every stone, every star above your head is the obedient offspring of mind. The entire cosmos is the visible expression of invisible intelligence. The laws of gravity and motion, the rhythm of the tides, the beating of your own heart, all are governed by thought in motion. To the wise, this is no mystery. It is the sacred formula written in every text of power. As a man thinketh, so is he. The Ethiopian masters called this law the voice that commands. They taught that every man holds within his mind the same creative spark that shaped the heavens. He spoke, and it was, they said. And when man speaks with faith, creation echoes the same words. When I examined the habits of the world's most successful men, I found they shared one faculty in common, the ability to transform thought into form. They did not wait for miracles, they caused them. They did not pray as beggars, they prayed as architects. Every desire they held in the mind with conviction took on life and moved toward fulfillment. This is the law of mental dominion, the power by which man commands his circumstances through the deliberate direction of thought. All that is necessary to invoke it is belief, repetition, and emotion. When desire becomes faith, and faith becomes habit, the world bends to its decree. You have spoken many words in your life, but only a few have carried the power of creation. Words without faith are noise. Words with belief are law. The true prayer is not the repetition of phrases, but the inner declaration backed by emotion. When thought and feeling unite, the universe obeys. Most prayers fail because they are petitions of doubt rather than commands of faith. The majority of men pray as though God were far away, reluctant to listen, requiring persuasion. But God, or infinite intelligence, dwells in the mind of man and acts only through law. To pray correctly is to align your thought with law, not to beg law to change. The sun does not shine because you ask it to. It shines because it must. So too does the universe respond to definite thought. The formula is exact and mathematical. Desire plus belief plus repetition equals creation. Desire is the seed, the first spark of creation. It must be definite, not vague. The man who desires success without defining it will reap confusion, for law responds only to precision. The desire must be so vivid that it burns through hesitation and consumes doubt. Belief is the soil, the mental medium in which the seed grows. Without belief, desire withers. With belief, it flourishes. Belief is formed by repetition of thought. Every idea held in the conscious mind and impressed upon the subconscious through repetition becomes belief. The subconscious then accepts it as truth and acts upon it. Repetition is the sunlight, the energy that brings the seed to life. Every time you repeat a thought with emotion, you strengthen its roots. The subconscious cannot distinguish between truth and falsehood. It accepts what it hears often enough with feeling. This is why propaganda rules the masses and why affirmation liberates the individual. The one who controls his repetition controls his destiny. I have seen this law operate with perfect precision. Thomas Edison did not invent the phonograph by accident. He held the image of it so vividly in his mind that it compelled reality to take form. He did not hope for discovery. He decided it must be found. He lived with that idea day and night until his hands became the tools of his mind. The machine that finally sang with recorded sound was but the physical shadow of an inner image already complete. So it was with Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and every other creator I have studied. They began with thoughts so definite that no circumstance could alter it. When others doubted, they persisted. When the world said impossible, they said inevitable. They were not men favored by fortune. They were men obedient to law. The same law works for the farmer who pictures a field of grain before it sprouts, for the mother who envisions her child strong and wise, for the craftsman who sees his work finished before it begins. Creation begins in imagination and moves through faith into form. The Ethiopian scrolls describe this process in sacred language. He who sees with the inner eye commands the outer world. To see with the inner eye is to visualize, to hold a mental image charged with emotion and belief. Visualization is not idle fantasy. It is the deliberate shaping of spiritual substance. Every picture held long enough in mind attracts the materials necessary for its realization. I have often been asked, does this mean any thought can create reality? The answer is yes, if it is definite, emotional, and persistent enough. But most men's thoughts are like passing shadows, changing with every mood. They wish for riches today and fear poverty tomorrow. They declare health at sunrise and talk of disease by nightfall. They affirm success but expect failure. Thus, their minds send mixed signals, and the universe, impartial and exact, reproduces confusion. The law cannot be mocked. It does not choose sides. It simply reflects what it receives. If you picture yourself as a victim, it will supply the circumstances to match. If you picture yourself as a master, it will send the means to prove it. The creative power of thought is both a blessing and a judgment. It rewards precision and punishes neglect. Every man lives in a world of his own making. Some inhabit kingdoms of harmony, others dwell in prisons of their own thought. You can trace every joy, every sorrow, every gain, and every loss back to the mental pattern that preceded it. The outer world is a mirror. Nothing more, nothing less. In Outwitting the Devil, I asked the adversary why so few men achieve greatness. His answer was simple. They do not think for themselves. They pray for what they already possess. He was right. Men beg for wisdom while ignoring the voice of intelligence within them. They ask for strength while speaking weakness. They plead for opportunity while imagining failure. And the law, which never sleeps, grants them what they truly believe, not what they merely wish. If you wish to prove this, begin with something small. Picture yourself calm in situations that once disturbed you. See it, feel it, believe it, and repeat the image until it becomes natural. Soon the outer event will conform to your inner peace. Then enlarge your experiment. Visualize health, success, companionship, or whatever your definite purpose requires. Do this with faith, and life will rearrange itself around your image. The Ethiopian text, known as the Book of Wisdom, expresses this law in simple words. The world is clay. The mind is the potter. You cannot blame the clay if the vessel is misshapen. You must change the hand that molds it, your thought. Many men misunderstand this law and turn it into superstition. They repeat words mechanically, believing that magic lies in sound. But repetition without emotion is powerless. The subconscious mind responds not to empty words, but to feeling. One phrase spoken with conviction outweighs 1,000 spoken with indifference. This is why daily autosuggestion, the deliberate feeding of constructive thoughts into the mind, is the most sacred of all disciplines. It is not self-deception. It is self-direction. Every morning, every night, and every hour you can spare, repeat to yourself your definite purpose, affirming it as already accomplished. Picture its completion, feel the satisfaction, and live mentally in its reality. This is not fantasy. It is faith in motion. Faith, rightly understood, is scientific. It is not an appeal to chance, but an operation of law. When you believe in a thing so completely that your mind accepts it as real, every atom of your being moves toward its fulfillment. The subconscious acts upon it. Infinite intelligence coordinates circumstances. Opportunities appear, and the path opens before you. The world calls it luck. The wise call it law. Every miracle recorded in history is an instance of this law. When Jesus said, "According to your faith be it unto you," he was stating a scientific principle. He did not heal men by violating law, but by using it. He saw the sick as whole, the blind as seeing, the dead as alive, and held that image so perfectly that matter rearranged itself to match the vision. He knew that the creative energy of God flows through the mind of man as thought. The words, "Let there be light," were not commands to the heavens, but commands to the mind. The devil fears this understanding above all, for it makes man independent. When you know that thought governs matter, you cannot be enslaved by superstition or by fear. You cease to be a beggar and become a creator. You no longer look to others for permission to succeed, nor to circumstances for opportunity. You command both through thought. Consider how this law operates even in the smallest acts of life. A man imagines a meal and his hands prepare it. He imagines a journey and his feet walk it. He imagines an invention and tools obey him. Every act begins in imagination. Every result is its echo. Thought is the first motion of all creation. The great failure of mankind has been ignorance of this truth. Men have feared their own minds, calling imagination dangerous, ambition sinful, and desire evil. But desire, purified by purpose, is the very breath of creation. Without it, the world would stand still. Desire is not to be suppressed, but directed, guided by faith and controlled by discipline. Desire becomes dangerous only when it drifts without aim. Then it turns inward and consumes itself. But when harnessed to a definite purpose and lifted by faith, it becomes the creative fire of God. Every builder, artist, and leader who has shaped civilization has used this fire consciously or unconsciously. The saints called it inspiration. The scientists call it insight. The philosophers call it intuition. It is all the same power, the movement of infinite intelligence through the focused mind. Let no man say, "I am not creative." Every thought you think creates. You may create harmony or discord, joy or misery, wealth or want, but create you must, for creation is the nature of mind. The only question is whether you create by design or by default. If you would create by design, practice this daily exercise. Choose one definite desire. Write it clearly in the present tense, as though already achieved. Visualize it with detail. Feel the gratitude and certainty of its reality. Repeat this process at least twice daily, morning and night. Do not strain, do not doubt. Let the image grow natural and familiar as a home to which you are returning. In time, it will become so real to your inner sense that the outer world must conform. This is law, as reliable as the sunrise. The Ethiopian teachers called this the harmony of the inner and outer voice. They said that when the mind speaks one thing and the heart feels another, creation halts. But when both speak the same word, the universe rushes to obey. The word amen at the end of a prayer was not meant as conclusion, but as affirmation. So it is. When spoken with faith, it seals the image into form. To live by this law is to walk as a king among men. You cease to fear circumstances, for you know they are your servants. You cease to envy others, for you know the same power works through all. You cease to doubt the future, for you are building it with every thought. You no longer say, I hope. You say, I know. You no longer say, I wish. You say, I will. You no longer drift. You decide. You no longer react. You create. And in this transformation, you rediscover the lost secret of the ages, the secret that heaven is not a reward, but a result, not a place, but a process of mind in harmony with law. Let this affirmation be written upon your heart. What I hold in thought with conviction, life must mirror in form. Speak it until it becomes certainty. Think it until it becomes identity. For the mind that knows this truth cannot fail, cannot fear, and cannot be enslaved. It has entered dominion, the kingdom of heaven within. The human mind is the greatest of all gates, the entrance through which either heaven or hell enters man's life. Yet few ever learn to guard it. They allow every sound, sight, and rumor to pass its threshold. They wander from thought to thought as a drunkard wanders through alleys. They open the gate to fear in the morning and to worry at night. They wonder why peace flees from them, why success eludes them, why joy fades like smoke. The answer is simple. They have never learned the law of controlled attention. In my interview with the devil, I asked him directly, by what means do you enter the mind of man? His answer was as cold as it was precise. I enter when a man's attention is not upon his own thought. That was his confession. The adversary needs no permission, only neglect. When attention is scattered, the devil walks in. When attention is focused, he is blinded by the light and retreats. The Ethiopian masters taught this law under another name, the single eye. They wrote, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. The single eye is controlled attention, the ability to hold one image, one purpose, one direction in mind without wavering. It is the secret of genius, the key to peace, the gate of heaven itself. Controlled attention is the spiritual discipline behind all achievement. Every invention, every work of art, every act of greatness was born of it. When a man learns to hold his mind upon one idea until that idea burns through every obstacle, he becomes the master of circumstance. When he allows his attention to be divided between many desires, he becomes the servant of confusion. The mind is not unlike a lens. Unfocused, it diffuses light into weakness. Focused, it gathers power strong enough to burn through steel. Attention is that lens. It can either scatter your power across 1,000 trifles or concentrate it into one definite purpose. The law makes no distinction. It obeys direction. Modern men have filled their minds with noise. They live in distraction and call it progress. They carry the entire world's chatter in their pockets and wonder why they cannot hear the voice of infinite intelligence. They drift through endless stimulation, gossip, entertainment, fear, and argument, and then say they have no peace. Peace is not absent. It is drowned in noise. The Ethiopian sages warned of this centuries ago. He who listens to many winds hears no music. They meant that the mind must choose its object, for the world is full of competing vibrations. Every voice you permit to enter your attention takes a portion of your creative power. Each hour of idle talk, each moment of gossip, each indulgence in envy or complaint is a leak in the reservoir of your mind. Controlled attention begins with the act of closing those leaks. Learn to be silent. Learn to turn off the stream of idle words and useless images. Learn to sit with your own thought until it becomes your servant rather than your master. When you can hold one idea without being pulled by 10 others, you have taken your first step into mastery. You cannot control what you will not observe. Therefore, the first discipline is awareness, to watch your own thought. The Ethiopian text, Wisdom of Light, says, "Guard the doorway of your mind as a king guards his treasury. Every idea that enters your consciousness will grow unless rejected. Ask of each thought, does this serve my definite purpose? If it does not, dismiss it at once." A man's attention is his life. Whatever holds it grows stronger. Whatever he neglects grows weaker. This is why men fail. They feed their fears and starve their faith. They dwell upon obstacles, talk about problems, imagine defeat, and then are surprised when failure appears. They have been watering weeds and wondering why no flowers bloom. Controlled attention reverses this process. It takes every idle moment and turns it into creation. Instead of imagining disaster, you imagine triumph. Instead of dwelling on loss, you dwell on gain. Instead of worrying about what you cannot control, you hold your thought on what you can. The universe expands whatever you concentrate upon. Attention is the magnet of experience. When you dwell on fear, you invite its form. When you dwell on faith, you awaken its power. When you dwell on success, you attract opportunity. This is not wishful thinking, it is law. Attention organizes the forces of the mind, and the mind organizes the forces of circumstance. The devil cannot enter a mind under control. He cannot tempt a man who is busy directing his own thought. His entire empire depends on distraction. He sends 1,000 small noises to steal your attention: gossip, irritation, fatigue, curiosity, vanity. Anything to keep you from thinking of what matters. His purpose is not to make you evil, but to make you scattered, for a scattered mind is powerless. Jesus said, "Watch and pray." Most have read those words as instruction for religion. I read them as a formula for dominion. Watch means to observe your thought. Pray means to fix it upon your purpose. To watch and pray is to practice controlled attention. The man who does this continually cannot be moved by the storms of life, for his thought stands like a lighthouse upon a rock. The Ethiopian scriptures describe this same practice as setting the face toward the light. When the ancient monks of Axum rose at dawn, they would face east in silence, holding their gaze upon the horizon. It was not the sun they worshipped, but the principle of unwavering attention. They trained their minds to follow light until they could hold it inwardly, even through the night. This was the meaning of prayer without ceasing. To master attention is to possess peace. A mind that can remain still upon one point of faith cannot be disturbed. When you hold your thought upon what is good, all that is unlike it fades. When you hold it upon truth, error dissolves. When you hold it upon harmony, discord disappears. The world outside is only the mirror of the world within. Change the image, and the reflection obeys. I have seen men of power who embodied this principle. One of them was John D. Rockefeller. During crises that would have broken lesser men, he remained calm as stone. While others panicked, he withdrew into silence, focusing upon his purpose with mathematical precision. When questioned about his composure, he replied, "I never allow my mind to leave the problem until I find its profit." That was not greed. It was control. The man who can think clearly in chaos becomes ruler of it. Controlled attention is also the foundation of happiness. The unhappy man is not cursed by fate. He is cursed by divided thought. He tries to hold joy in one hand and fear in the other. He attempts to live in the present while clinging to the past. He allows his attention to wander between regret and anxiety until peace is lost. Happiness is not something to be found. It is the natural condition of an undistracted mind. The Ethiopian sages expressed it thus: heaven begins when the mind stands still upon truth. The still mind does not mean an empty one. It means a mind filled only with what is worthy. It is not absence of thought, but mastery of it. To hold your attention upon truth until it becomes identity is to enter heaven while still in the body. How does one attain this mastery? Through daily discipline. The mind, like the muscles, grows strong through use. You cannot control your attention once and be free forever. You must practice until it becomes habit. Begin with small exercises. Choose one image, perhaps your definite purpose, and hold it for 5 minutes without interruption. When distraction arises, gently return. Do not scold yourself. Persistence is the key. Next, extend the exercise to your daily life. When you work, work with full attention. When you rest, rest completely. When you speak, be present in your words. When you listen, listen without drifting. Each moment of awareness strengthens your mastery. The habit of controlled attention carries power into everything you do. Your words gain weight because they come from unity of thought. Your actions produce results because they are guided by a single intention. People will feel the force of your presence without knowing why. It is the radiation of focused mind. In the Ethiopian monasteries, the young initiates were taught this by a simple ritual. They were told to light a candle and protect it from the wind through an entire night. If the flame wavered, they shielded it. If it burned low, they fed it. If they fell asleep, it went out. The candle was their attention, the wind their thoughts. The master who kept his flame burning till dawn was declared ready for the mysteries of wisdom. You must perform the same rite inwardly. The flame of purpose must burn through every storm. Shield it from gossip, from doubt, from fatigue, from distraction. Keep feeding it with repetition and faith. When it flickers, protect it. When it dims, speak your affirmation. My attention is law. I look only upon what I intend to create. Repeat this until it becomes your nature, for the mind follows its own words, and by repetition, you will find that your attention obeys you as a trained servant obeys its master. Consider this: all great spiritual disciplines, meditation, prayer, fasting, solitude, are simply ways to train attention. The monk in silence, the artist at his canvas, the inventor at his bench, all are practicing the same law. They withdraw energy from distraction and focus it upon one idea until it becomes form. Without controlled attention, even faith is powerless. Faith scattered among many fears is like sunlight through a broken window, warm but weak. Faith concentrated through attention is like light through a lens. It ignites creation. The man who can hold one image of success, one thought of health, one purpose of service, and exclude all contrary suggestions is greater than kings. When attention is not controlled, the mind becomes a battlefield. Every voice competes for power: memory, imagination, fear, desire, hope, resentment. The untrained man tries to fight them all and wonders why he is exhausted. The master does not fight. He commands silence. He returns his thought to his purpose as a ship returns to its course after a storm. Controlled attention also grants mastery over time. The distracted man is always in the past or the future, regretting what was or fearing what will be. The focused man lives entirely in the present moment, and in that moment he finds eternity. For the present is not a fraction of time, but the point of contact between man and the infinite. When your attention is wholly present, you are united with God. The devil fears this union above all. He whispers to you of what might happen tomorrow, of what has gone wrong before. He fills your mind with noise to keep you from silence, because silence is his death. One instant of true stillness, one moment of undivided attention, and the devil vanishes. The Ethiopian masters described it poetically. When the mind looks steadfastly upon light, darkness remembers it has no home. Darkness cannot argue with light. It disappears before it. The man who holds his attention upon faith does not need to fight fear. Fear dissolves of itself. You have within you a power greater than any world can oppose. It is the power to direct your own mind. When you choose where to look, you choose what to live. When you choose what to remember, you choose what to become. The control of attention is the control of destiny. Practice this law and you will find miracles following you as naturally as shadows follow light. Opportunities appear, people assist, conditions align, because the universe obeys concentrated thought. It has always obeyed. It merely awaited your command. And so I tell you again, learn to look only upon what you intend to create. Refuse to look upon fear, for to look is to give life. Refuse to look upon failure, for to look is to empower it. Fix your gaze upon purpose, upon faith, upon harmony, and these shall multiply in your world. For heaven is not a place reached after death. It is a state reached through attention. It is the moment when your thought and God's thought move as one. It is the still point at the center of your being where nothing can disturb you because you are aligned with the eternal law of creation. Remember always the ancient Ethiopian prayer, "May my mind be single as the sun, my purpose steady as its light, and my faith constant as its fire." Let that be your creed. For when attention is mastered, life itself becomes obedience to your thought, and the gate of heaven stands open within you. All power in heaven and on earth moves through the law of harmony. Every star that burns, every planet that turns, every seed that grows, and every thought that creates, each obeys one rhythm, one tone, one universal vibration. The universe is not a chaos of forces. It is an orchestra of order, and every discord in the mind of man produces its echo in his world. The man who understands harmony aligns himself with the infinite. The man who defies it, through anger, envy, or selfishness, falls under the dominion of the devil. For discord is his only domain. Harmony is the key by which the gates of power are opened. It is the secret law that holds atoms together, that binds man to his purpose, and that links soul to soul. It is not a sentiment, but a science. When two or more minds unite in perfect understanding for a definite purpose, they form a magnetic circuit through which infinite intelligence expresses itself. This is the mastermind, and it is the highest demonstration of harmony. In my conversation with the devil, he admitted this much. When two or more minds are blended in harmony, I cannot enter. That was his confession of defeat. The devil thrives in discord, suspicion, and selfishness, but harmony banishes him as light banishes darkness. Wherever men gather in trust and shared purpose, there the devil is powerless. The Ethiopian scriptures contain the same law in older form. They speak of the council of the wise, a sacred circle where elders join their minds in meditation and decision. Their creed was simple: in unity is power, in harmony is God. They believe that when many think as one, they invoke a force greater than any single mind could summon. And they were right. Harmony multiplies power. Discord divides it. 1,000 men working at cross purposes accomplish nothing, while two minds in perfect understanding can move a mountain. Henry Ford once said that his greatest invention was not the motor car, but the harmony of minds that built it. He surrounded himself with men of one purpose, and through their unity, he transformed the world. The mastermind at Dearborn was a living engine of thought, turning faith into fact and ideas into industry. Andrew Carnegie followed the same law. He created not a business but a fellowship of purpose. His steel empire was not forged only in fire and iron, but in harmony of mind. His associates were not servants but allies. Their thought worked as one mechanism guided by a single will. Carnegie himself told me, "The secret of success lies in the harmonious cooperation of minds dedicated to one aim." Through that harmony, he attracted wealth beyond counting, but more than that, he proved a divine principle, that unity of purpose is the voice of God speaking through men. Harmony is the sound of creation itself. Discord is the sound of destruction. Wherever men cooperate, life grows. Wherever they compete in jealousy, life decays. The devil builds his empire in divided minds. He whispers suspicion between brothers, resentment between workers, pride between partners. His greatest weapon is not violence, but misunderstanding. He knows that once men distrust one another, they lose access to infinite intelligence. The law is exact. Two minds vibrating in faith produce strength. Two minds vibrating in fear produce ruin. The frequency of thought determines the result. This is what the ancients meant when they said, "Where two agree as touching anything, it shall be done." Agreement is not mere conversation, it is vibration. When two minds vibrate as one, the law of harmony becomes the channel of creation. Look upon the human body and you will see the same principle. When every organ works in harmony, there is health. When they fight, there is disease. Look upon society. When each man performs his duty in peace with others, there is prosperity. When envy and greed set them against each other, there is decay. Harmony is the law of life. Discord is the law of death. I have seen the difference between the two in men I have known. There was once a businessman of great talent but small understanding. He was clever, ambitious, and tireless, but he treated every partner as a rival and every worker as a tool. His enterprise grew quickly, but within a few years it collapsed. The reason was simple. His mind radiated discord, and it infected all around him. Men turned against each other, plans crumbled, and his fortune dissolved like mist. He blamed betrayal, but the betrayal was his own violation of harmony. Another man, with less intellect but greater spirit, built his success upon cooperation. He shared credit freely, trusted his fellows, and sought mutual gain. His offices were places of laughter and faith. His company thrived even in hardship because its members thought together. Where there was harmony, there was power. Where there was power, there was progress. The same law governs the invisible fellowship of great thinkers. The inventions that have lifted humanity were not created in isolation, but in the hidden communion of minds. Edison, Ford, and Einstein drew their ideas not only from study, but from the subtle realm of infinite intelligence. When a mind vibrates in harmony with faith and purpose, it attunes itself to that universal current, and ideas flow as light flows through glass. This is why moments of genius often come in silence after prayer or meditation, because the mind has entered harmony with the infinite. The Ethiopian teachers knew this mystery and guarded it carefully. They taught that man alone cannot reach the highest revelation. He must join in sacred fellowship. In their monasteries, young initiates were instructed to form triads, 3 minds united in a single goal of enlightenment. Each was to hold the same image of truth in mind, speak no contradiction, and pray as one. It was said that when their minds became perfectly attuned, they could perceive knowledge beyond words. This was the first mastermind. The mastermind principle is not limited to religion or business. It applies to all of life. The family that lives in harmony becomes a fortress against every hardship. The marriage that vibrates with mutual respect becomes a source of infinite strength. The friends who uplift one another through faith and counsel become fountains of courage. Wherever harmony is, God is in the midst of them. When harmony is broken, even great talents become useless. Many a brilliant man has failed because he refused cooperation. He thought himself sufficient, but no man is self-sufficient. Infinite intelligence expresses itself through relationships, through shared thought, through the blending of minds in creative sympathy. The hermit may find peace, but he will not build civilizations. Only the cooperative spirit can create enduring achievement. The devil cannot work in harmony. His nature is division. He dwells in arguments, in pride, in jealousy. He provokes quarrels between allies, doubts between friends, competition between equals. He is the spirit of mine instead of ours. The man who succumbs to envy or suspicion has opened the gates of his mind to him. The man who forgives, who seeks understanding, who builds fellowship, he has shut those gates forever. Harmony does not mean weakness. It is not agreement with evil nor submission to error. True harmony is agreement with law. It is the alignment of thought with truth, and truth is always constructive. When a man harmonizes with law, he becomes immovable. When he harmonizes with falsehood, he collapses. The highest form of harmony is unity with infinite intelligence itself. When your mind vibrates with faith, gratitude, and definiteness, you enter communion with that unseen source of power. Ideas, opportunities, and guidance flow to you as naturally as rivers flow to the sea. This is why men of faith appear lucky. They are in tune with law. The Ethiopian textbook of the Sun describes this communion beautifully. The wise man does not call upon God as distant. He tunes himself to the divine melody until he and the music are one. To tune oneself is to harmonize thought, emotion, and action with one definite purpose. When that alignment is achieved, the universe becomes your orchestra and plays according to your theme. In practical terms, the law of harmony requires 3 disciplines. First, control of emotion. Anger, jealousy, and hatred are vibrations of discord. They block the flow of infinite intelligence. You cannot hate and create at the same time. The mind must be calm, as a mirror must be still to reflect the light. Second, control of speech. Every word you utter carries vibration. Words of complaint and criticism sow discord, even in your own subconscious. Speak only what strengthens, unites, and builds. The master mind can exist only among men whose words carry the tone of respect. Third, control of association. Choose your companions carefully. Association is the magnet of destiny. You cannot rise above the level of the minds you surround yourself with. Seek those who believe in purpose, in progress, in faith. Avoid the cynical, the idle, and the fearful, for their vibrations will pull you downward. The Ethiopian masters taught, "The man who walks with the blind will stumble, though his eyes be open." If you cannot find companions of harmony, build one through prayer. Speak in silence to infinite intelligence, for that is the supreme partner. The man who enters that inner communion can never be lonely. His mind becomes a receiving station for ideas, a transmitter of power. He carries the master mind within himself, for he is harmonized with the infinite. When I first discovered this principle, I tested it through experience. I began to seek the company of definite thinkers, men who had faith and purpose. I found that in their presence, my own ideas expanded, my courage grew, my plans became clear. In turn, my faith strengthened theirs. The atmosphere of harmony produced results no single effort could have achieved. It was as though some invisible intelligence had joined our circle, guiding and inspiring us, and indeed it had, for that is the law. This same harmony governs nations. When the people unite around principle, the nation thrives. When factions divide them, the nation decays. The founders of America understood this truth. They met in Philadelphia not as rivals, but as allies of destiny. Despite differences, they harmonized upon one idea: liberty under divine law. That harmony created a current of faith that swept across the world. The devil fought it with fear and division, but the law prevailed. Harmony is not achieved once for all. It must be maintained. Like music, it requires tuning. Ego, pride, and suspicion are dust upon the strings of the instrument. They must be removed daily through humility, gratitude, and forgiveness. The mind that forgives is always in harmony. The mind that resents is always in discord. When you harmonize with others, you not only multiply power, you multiply joy. The creative act becomes delight, the labor becomes song, and every success becomes a shared triumph. This is why heaven is described as a place of perfect harmony. It is not a distant realm, but a state of mind where all wills are aligned with divine law. Hell is the opposite state, each soul insisting upon its own way, deaf to the music of the whole. The devil has no melody of his own. He merely distorts the music of God. He changes harmony into noise, cooperation into competition, unity into confusion. He survives only where men insist on playing their own tune. Therefore, let your every relationship become a practice of harmony. Begin with your own mind. Make peace between thought and feeling. Then extend it to your home. Make peace between yourself and those you love. Then to your work. Make peace between yourself and your associates. Finally, make peace with life itself, trusting that all is governed by law and that law is good. To live in harmony does not mean to escape conflict, but to master it. The true musician does not avoid dissonance. He resolves it into beauty. So too must you resolve every discordant circumstance into wisdom. Every difficulty is an instrument by which your soul learns finer harmony. When harmony becomes your constant vibration, you attract others who share it. They will recognize you without words. Your presence will inspire confidence. Your silence will command respect. You will find yourself surrounded by allies, opportunities, and unseen protection. The law of harmony draws its own company. Let this be your affirmation. I think in harmony with all good. Through unity, I multiply my power. Repeat it daily until it becomes your atmosphere. Let your thought, word, and deed vibrate in unison with that truth. For when harmony rules your mind, the universe itself will conspire to magnify your purpose. There is no greater secret. The power you seek does not lie in struggle, but in alignment. The wisdom you crave does not come from striving, but from stillness. The success you desire will not be forced. It will be attracted through harmony. Remember always, the infinite is not reached by noise, but by resonance. Tune your mind to the divine frequency of faith, gratitude, and goodwill, and you will hear the music of heaven playing through your own life. Every age has built its altars to fear and called them holy. Every century has knelt before weakness and called it virtue. And under these veils of piety, the devil has done his most perfect work. He has not ruled by force, but by confusion. He has disguised submission as holiness, poverty as humility, and ignorance as faith. He has made mankind worship its own chains. The greatest of all illusions is that obedience to fear is righteousness. From the first moment man learned to think, there were those who feared his power to think. So they told him that curiosity was sin, that confidence was pride, that pleasure was corruption, and that mastery was rebellion. They said, "You must not question, for the gods are angry. You must not rise, for heaven will punish you." They wrapped the light of mind in darkness, teaching men to doubt the very faculties through which God speaks. This is the oldest lie upon earth, the belief that the Creator delights in the weakness of his creation. It is the devil's masterpiece because it converts the highest impulse of man into the lowest. It teaches that virtue lies not in strength, but in surrender, not in courage, but in caution, not in wisdom, but in blind belief. And so the strong become meek, the curious become silent, and the free become slaves, all in the name of being good. The Ethiopian scriptures warned of this deception. In the ancient text known as the Scroll of Light and Shadow, it is written, "Beware those who profit by thy fear, for they call their prisons temples, and their chains commandments. That line reveals the secret structure of the devil's empire. He rules not through violence, but through the corruption of words. He takes noble ideas, faith, humility, obedience, and twists them until they serve his design. True humility is reverence for truth. False humility is denial of self. True obedience is harmony with law. False obedience is submission to ignorance. True holiness is mastery of thought. False holiness is fear of thought. Through these perversions, the devil has made slaves of saints and victims of believers. The priests of fear have ever sought to convince mankind that poverty is the proof of virtue. They declared that riches corrupt, that desire is sin, and that ambition is a snare. They told men to renounce the world and await reward beyond the grave. But life is the gift of God, not a punishment. Desire, rightly directed, is divine. Ambition, purified by purpose, is the instrument of progress. There is no sin in wealth earned by service, and no holiness in want endured through idleness. The soil produces nothing for the man who refuses to plant. I have seen more goodness in one man who dares to create than in 1,000 who dare only to pray. For creation is obedience to the highest law, the law of increase. The universe itself expands because growth is the will of God. To refuse growth, to hide one's talent, to fear success, these are the true disobediences. The devil's cleverest trick is to make weakness appear sacred. He whispers to the timid, "Your fear is wisdom." He whispers to the lazy, "Your inaction is patience." He whispers to the slave, "Your chains are righteousness." And when they bow to him, he smiles and calls them faithful. Religion was never meant to enslave the mind. The prophets of old were men of vision, not submission. Moses defied a king. Elijah confronted idols. Christ overthrew the merchants of fear and declared the kingdom within man. Yet their words were twisted by those who feared their power. What began as liberation was turned into law. What began as truth became tradition. The fire of revelation was turned to the ash of ritual. The Ethiopian manuscripts preserved what later faiths forgot. that the true temple of God is the mind disciplined in righteousness. They taught that the altar is the conscience, the prayer is right thinking, and the sacrifice is fear itself. The devil hides from no ritual more fiercely than from a mind that dares to think freely. When I conversed with him, I asked, "Which of all your weapons is the most effective?" He answered, "The doctrine that weakness is a virtue." I pressed him further. "Why?" He replied, "Because it destroys strength at its root." When a man believes that to be strong is to be sinful, I no longer need to fight him. He fights himself. Consider how subtle this deception is. The man who desires to succeed feels guilt for his desire. The one who loves beauty calls it vanity. The one who seeks knowledge fears it may lead him astray. Thus, all energy turns inward in conflict instead of outward in creation. The devil need only whisper, "Be humble," and the mind folds its wings. But humility, rightly understood, is not submission to mediocrity. It is reverence before law. It is the recognition that the universe is perfect and that man must become one with its order. A humble man does not crawl. He stands in awe. He does not deny his power. He dedicates it to service. The devil has taught men to be smaller than they are. The truth is that man honors God most when he dares to use the power God placed within him. Let no one mistake this truth. The soul that fears to express its own greatness is ungrateful to its Creator. You are not a worm crawling toward salvation. You are the living idea of infinite intelligence seeking fuller expression. The flower glorifies its maker by blooming, not by hiding its color. The sun honors its source by shining, not by dimming. And man glorifies his Creator by mastering himself and using his powers in service to good. Yet see how the devil has turned even this into guilt. He has filled the world with teachers who preach submission, not mastery, who glorify ignorance as innocence and weakness as sanctity. They tell men that to question is to doubt God, though God himself endowed them with reason. They tell men to suppress ambition, though ambition built every bridge, cured every disease, and lifted civilization from the dust. They tell men that suffering is holy, though suffering is but resistance to law. They have taken the light of truth and used it to blind the eyes of those who seek. The Ethiopian masters warned that false virtue is more dangerous than open sin. Better the thief who knows his theft, they said, than the coward who calls his fear obedience. For the thief may repent and grow wise, but the coward believes himself righteous, and so never awakens. False virtue stops the soul upon its path. To awaken from this illusion, one must redefine holiness. Holiness is not separation from life, but alignment with it. It is not escape from the world, but mastery in it. It is not denial of desire, but purification of desire through purpose. The truly holy man is not one who renounces wealth, but one who uses it for good. Not one who withdraws from men, but one who uplifts them. Not one who obeys blindly, but one who thinks clearly and acts justly. The devil's kingdom thrives wherever guilt replaces understanding. He has taught men to feel shame for their strength, to apologize for their talent, and to despise their success. He whispers that contentment is greed and that self-respect is pride. And in believing him, men disarm themselves. But hear me clearly. Guilt is the shadow cast by false virtue. When a man feels guilt for obeying the law of his nature, he is under the devil's spell. The only sin is ignorance of law, and the only virtue is obedience to it. The law says, think clearly, act decisively, serve faithfully, create fearlessly. That is holiness. True virtue does not bow to fear. It commands it. It does not beg for mercy. It acts in justice. It does not hide from power. It governs it. The strong man who uses his strength in service to good is holier than the weak man who prays for deliverance from the duties of strength. History has honored the wrong kind of saints. The world kneels to those who renounce life instead of those who perfect it. It crowns the martyrs who died rather than the builders who lived. It praises resignation and calls it faith. But resignation is not faith. It is surrender. Faith acts. Faith builds. Faith governs. When I examine the lives of men who truly changed the world, Lincoln, Edison, Ford, Carnegie, I found no trace of false virtue in them. They did not seek the approval of the timid. They did not ask permission from fear. They did not wait for heaven's reward. They built it. Their faith was active. Their humility was reverence before law, and their goodness was mastery applied to service. The Ethiopian text, the Gospel of the Flame, describes such men as priests of action. It says, "He who serves the divine by the work of his hands worships more truly than he who only prays with his lips. This is the lost law of practical holiness, the worship of God through perfect performance of one's purpose. Every man has a calling, a place where his talent and service meet. To discover it and fulfill it is virtue. To ignore it is sin. The devil tempts men to look for holiness in abstinence instead of action. He tells the musician to silence his song, the craftsman to break his tools, the thinker to smother his reason, the leader to hide his courage. Thus he starves the world of its geniuses and fills it with the mediocre. Let every man who reads these words remember, you were not created to hide. You were born to express, to build, to command, to serve the good by mastering the power within you. Do not mistake meekness for moral excellence. Meekness is useful only when it is self-control under power. Without power, meekness is only fear pretending to be virtue. To free yourself from false virtue, you must break 3 chains. First, the chain of guilt. Guilt is the weapon of those who fear your strength. Refuse to carry it. Examine every feeling of unworthiness and ask, who profits from this belief? If it robs you of confidence, it serves the devil. Cast it aside. Second, the chain of dependence. False virtue teaches that others must decide what is right for you. The moment you surrender your conscience to another, you have abdicated your throne. Seek counsel, yes, but never servitude. The law of God speaks within your own soul. Third, the chain of false humility. You were not meant to shrink before greatness, but to embody it. The Ethiopian master said, bow not before any man, nor expect any man to bow before thee. Both are idolatry. Walk upright, for you carry the spark of infinite intelligence. When these chains are broken, virtue becomes freedom. You will act not from fear, but from knowledge. You will serve not because you are commanded, but because you choose. You will seek no praise and fear no blame, for your law will be internal. That is true holiness, the mastery of self in harmony with the divine. Let us strip the mask from the devil's illusion. The meek he enslaves, the strong he fears. The ignorant he confuses, the wise he avoids. The coward he commands, the courageous he cannot touch. The truly virtuous man is beyond his reach because he lives by understanding, not by superstition. So stand boldly before life. Think clearly, act nobly, and use your power with reverence. Let this affirmation seal the truth within you. I honor the divine by mastering myself, not by bowing to fear. Repeat it until it burns through every remnant of false virtue. For when mastery replaces submission and knowledge replaces fear, the devil's illusion dissolves. Then, and only then, does man become truly holy. Not a servant trembling before heaven, but a creator working with it. The saints of the future will not live in cloisters. They will build cities, cure disease, write books, teach children, and govern nations. They will not hide from life. They will perfect it. They will not renounce wealth. They will use it to serve. They will not suppress desire. They will purify it with purpose. These will be the holy men and women of the coming age, creators instead of victims, thinkers instead of followers, masters instead of martyrs. The time has come for mankind to tear down the altars built to fear and to build new ones to understanding. The age of false virtue is ending. The age of mastery has begun. There is a moment in the life of every man when he stands alone before his greatest enemy. It is not another person. It is not circumstance. It is not even death. It is fear, silent, invisible, and cunning. It lives not in the world, but in the mind. It wears 1,000 faces. The fear of failure, the fear of poverty, the fear of rejection, the fear of loss, the fear of the unknown. It whispers that you are small, that you are weak, that life is uncertain, and that you cannot trust yourself. Fear is the shadow cast by ignorance of law. It vanishes in the light of understanding as mist vanishes before the sun. Yet for ages men have built monuments to it, knelt before it, and called it prudence. They have organized their lives around its commands, never realizing that every act born of fear is an act of worship to the devil himself. For fear is his throne, and ignorance is his altar. When I conversed with that unseen enemy, I asked him directly, "What gives you power over men?" He answered, "Their habit of fearing me." Then I asked, "How do you sustain that power?" He said, "By keeping them ignorant of who they are." And there lies the root of all suffering. Man has forgotten that he is a creator. He thinks himself a victim of chance, a plaything of fate, a beggar before heaven. He fears what he has been given power to command. The Ethiopian scriptures reveal the same mystery. In the book of Light's Triumph it is written, "Perfect understanding casteth out fear, as light casteth out darkness. For fear liveth only in ignorance, and ignorance is slain by knowledge of law. To know law is to know safety. To understand order is to know peace. Fear cannot dwell where mind and faith are one." Let us expose fear for what it is, a disease of the imagination. It begins as a whisper, a small image of danger or loss, and grows by attention. The mind, believing it real, feeds it with emotion until it becomes a living presence. Yet it is made of nothing but thought. The man who refuses to think it dies instantly. The man who indulges it becomes its slave. Every form of fear has the same root, the belief that life can destroy you. But how can life destroy what is made of life? The same power that spins the stars beats your heart. The same intelligence that governs the tides governs your destiny. To fear is to deny that intelligence. To trust it is to reign with it. The first step in destroying fear is to recognize its falseness. It is not a force, but an absence, not a presence, but a void. It has no substance of its own. It borrows existence only from your belief. Withdraw that belief, and it collapses like a shadow without a light. The second step is decision. Decision is the death of fear. The moment you say, "I will," with conviction, the power of fear is broken. For fear feeds on hesitation. The longer you delay, the stronger it grows. The instant you act, it dies. Every man who has risen from weakness to strength has passed through this battle. Before every great achievement stands the test of fear. Edison faced it when failure threatened to crush his faith. Lincoln faced it when the nation's fate hung on his conscience alone. Ford faced it when poverty mocked his vision. In every case, they chose decision over doubt. They declared faith as law, and fear retreated. I, too, have known that battle. There was a time when fear ruled my days and haunted my nights. It whispered that I had failed too many times, that I was too old to begin again, that the world no longer cared for my work. I listened, and my strength withered. Then one morning I said aloud, "No more." I wrote these words on my desk. I think in faith, and fear dissolves before my decision. Each time I read it, fear weakened. Each time I acted upon it, faith grew. In the end, fear died of starvation. The Ethiopian masters taught that fear is slain not by courage alone, but by understanding. They called this the armor of light. To wear it, one must understand that every event in life obeys law, that nothing happens by accident, that every cause produces its effect, and that the mind of man is the greatest cause of all. When this knowledge becomes conviction, fear has no soil in which to root. The man who lives by law walks unafraid through every storm. He does not ask, "What will happen?" He asks, "What must I think and do to shape what happens?" He knows that infinite intelligence governs all things, and that he partakes of that intelligence through thought. He does not tremble before the unknown, for to him the unknown is only the unthought. He governs by thinking rightly, by acting decisively, and by persisting faithfully. The devil fears the man who understands cause and effect, for such a man cannot be deceived by appearances. He sees beyond the surface of events to the law beneath them. He knows that adversity is not punishment, but instruction, that failure is not defeat, but correction, that loss is not tragedy, but transition. Thus he welcomes every experience as a teacher. This is the death of fear, not resistance to it, but mastery of it through understanding. The Ethiopian scriptures echo this truth. Fear departeth when the soul seeth reason in all things. Think of those words. Fear cannot live in the presence of reason. The moment you see purpose in what you once called pain, the pain changes its nature. What once terrified you becomes a messenger of wisdom. Fear is born of two lies, that you are separate from God and that life is uncertain. The first lie robs you of power. The second robs you of peace. But life is not uncertain. It is exact. Its laws never sleep, never err, never fail. You do not live in a universe of chance, but in a universe of law. And that law is friendly to faith and hostile only to fear. When Franklin Roosevelt said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," he spoke a truth as old as the pyramids. He understood that nations, like men, are destroyed not by enemies, but by the belief that they are powerless. Fear is the destroyer of initiative, the strangler of imagination, the assassin of faith. It freezes the will, blinds the intellect, and paralyzes the heart. It is the one enemy you must conquer daily, for it waits at the door of every opportunity. Let me show you its workings. A young man dreams of success. He begins to plan, but fear whispers, "What if you fail?" He listens, he delays, he waits for certainty that never comes. Months pass, years pass, and his dream dies unborn. Another man, equally uncertain, acts despite fear. He fails, learns, tries again, and succeeds. The difference between them is not talent, but decision. One surrendered to fear, the other starved it. The Ethiopian masters gave a simple rule. Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. Action is the medicine of the soul. Thought without action breeds doubt. Action based on thought breeds faith. Each step taken in defiance of fear gathers new strength, until one day you turn and find that fear no longer follows you. Fear has no defense against motion. Its power ends where decision begins. Even a small step destroys it. When a man stands still, fear multiplies. When he moves, it dies. The universe aids the mover, not the hesitator. Infinite intelligence cannot work through a stagnant mind. It requires flow. Action is faith in motion. The Ethiopian text, The Crown of Courage, says, "Heaven answereth not the timid, but the decided. For decision is the tongue by which man speaketh to God." Think on that. Each time you decide, you are declaring dominion. You are saying, I trust the law. I trust myself. I trust the power that moves through me. That declaration aligns you with infinite intelligence, and the whole machinery of life begins to move on your behalf. Dominion, then, is not arrogance. It is the natural state of an awakened mind. To rule your world does not mean to oppress others. It means to govern yourself. It means to master your thought, your emotion, and your action until they obey one will, the will to good. Dominion is not pride, but obedience to law. It is the fulfillment of Christ's words, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." The birth of dominion begins the moment fear dies, and fear dies the moment you decide to think. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot think and tremble at the same time. The mind that observes law cannot believe in chaos. The soul that trusts its divine partnership cannot imagine defeat. Fear vanishes when faith is organized into understanding. The Ethiopian masters describe the birth of dominion as the crowning of the mind. It is the moment when man remembers his origin, that he is not a creature of dust, but of spirit. It is the moment when he ceases to beg and begins to command, not through arrogance, but through certainty. He no longer prays, "Lord, deliver me," but "Lord, express through me." He no longer asks for miracles. He becomes one. When fear dies, power awakens. The timid man, once ruled by circumstance, finds that circumstance now bends to him. The sick man grows well because his thought no longer pictures disease. The poor man rises because his mind no longer accepts limitation. The lonely man becomes magnetic because he no longer radiates lack. Life begins to obey him because his thought has become law. This is not fantasy, it is divine mathematics. Every thought of fear lowers vibration. Every thought of faith raises it. When vibration rises to harmony with infinite intelligence, all that is needed appears. This is why the fearless man attracts opportunity and why the fearful repel it. Faith expands consciousness. Fear contracts it. Faith builds bridges. Fear builds walls. Faith invites the infinite. Fear shuts the door. The final step in destroying fear is faith expressed through repetition. Fear is a habit of thought. It must be replaced by a stronger habit. Every morning declare your dominion. Every night give thanks for it. Every time doubt appears, speak your law aloud. Fear has no dwelling in a decided mind. Speak it until your subconscious accepts it as fact. Speak it until your body feels it, until your eyes reflect it, until your presence radiates it. This is the practice of spiritual warfare. You do not fight fear with fists or argument. You dissolve it by asserting truth. The soldier of faith does not run from battle. He stands still and says, "The law of good governs me." The devil cannot withstand that command, for it comes from understanding, and understanding is light. There is no higher victory than this, the victory over fear. It is the birth of freedom, the resurrection of courage, the beginning of mastery. It is the moment when man awakens to his divine inheritance and claims the title long denied him, Lord of his own mind. From that moment forward, he is no longer a slave of circumstance. He does not beg for peace. He creates it. He does not seek protection. He radiates it. He does not wait for fortune. He organizes it. He walks through life as one who knows that infinite intelligence walks beside him, indeed within him. This is the true meaning of dominion. It is not conquest of others, but conquest of fear. It is not possession of things, but possession of self. The man who has mastered fear cannot be enslaved, cannot be bought, cannot be broken. He lives in harmony with law and in fellowship with the divine. He commands not through force, but through understanding. The Ethiopian sages ended their doctrine of fear with this declaration: He who hath conquered fear hath conquered the world, for the world is made of fear and faith, and he hath chosen faith. So choose faith now. Let fear die this hour. Stand upright and speak this affirmation until it lives in every cell of your being. Fear has no dwelling in a decided mind. I am governed by law, guided by intelligence, and sustained by faith. I command my thought, and life obeys. Repeat it when you rise, when you work, when you face doubt, when you lie down to rest. For repetition is the forge of belief, and belief is the death of fear. When you do this long enough, something miraculous occurs. The old tremors fade, the heart beats steady, the mind grows calm, the air itself seems lighter. You realize that fear was never real. It was a habit of blindness. And now, seeing clearly, you walk not as a creature of chance, but as a creator of purpose. This is the birth of dominion. It is the first sunrise of the soul. The long night of fear is over. The dawn of mastery has begun. There comes a time in the evolution of every mind when it sees the truth so clearly that it can never again return to ignorance. That moment is the dawn of dominion, when man discovers that he is not a servant pleading with heaven, but a channel through which heaven works. When that truth strikes the soul, life itself is reborn. Fear dies, doubt vanishes, weakness transforms into power, and the long illusion of separation ends. From the beginning, the great teachers spoke of this final revelation, but their words were twisted by fear and translated by ignorance. They said that the Spirit of God dwells within man, that the kingdom of heaven is within, that man is made in the image and likeness of the Creator. Yet men, unable to believe themselves divine, made idols of clay and begged them for mercy. They knelt before symbols of their own potential, never realizing that the power they worshiped was within them all along. The Ethiopian scriptures guard this truth in the purest words ever written. The light is within thee, kindle it. For ages those words were hidden from the multitudes by rulers and priests who profited by man's blindness. But now, as truth reawakens, the ancient law returns, that man and God are not distant, but united in will, joined by the bridge of thought. When I conversed with the devil, he confessed with reluctance that his power ends the moment man accepts responsibility for his own mind. He said, I dwell only where man denies his divinity. He meant that ignorance is his only kingdom, that doubt is his only throne. The instant man says, I am one with the infinite, the devil vanishes like smoke before a wind. To understand this is to see that creation is not finished. It continues through you. God did not complete his work and withdraw. He planted the creative faculty within the mind of man and said, continue. Every idea you form, every plan you execute, every dream you dare to act upon is the continuation of divine creation. You are the means by which the invisible becomes visible. You are the instrument through which infinite intelligence takes form in time and space. The man who understands this no longer prays as a beggar, he prays as a creator. His prayer is not a request, but a command issued through faith. He says, "Let there be light in my affairs," and there is light. He says, "Let harmony reign in my home," and harmony appears. He speaks, and life obeys, for his word is law to his own mind, and his mind is the channel of divine power. The unawakened man prays for strength. The awakened man uses it. The unawakened man asks for wisdom. The awakened man listens and receives. The unawakened man begs for guidance. The awakened man knows that the voice of God speaks within him as intuition. The unawakened man worships power. The awakened man expresses it. This is not arrogance. It is obedience of the highest kind, obedience to divine law. You were not created to crawl in fear before your Creator. You were created to cooperate with Him. The infinite does not need slaves. It seeks channels. It does not demand submission. It desires expression. The highest worship is to think rightly, to act decisively, and to live as a manifestation of divine purpose. The Ethiopian masters taught this through a simple symbol, the flame within the heart. They said that each man is given a spark of the eternal fire, and his task is to keep it burning. To neglect it is sin. To deny it is death, but to feed it with faith and discipline is holiness. When the flame grows strong, it illumines all thought, burns away fear, and reveals the truth. That man and God are one in essence and in purpose. You may doubt this unity because you have been trained to doubt. You have been taught from childhood that you are separate, that heaven is above, earth below, and you somewhere between. You have been told that God is distant, that his ways are mysterious, that his will must be begged for. But consider the evidence of your own being. What is the thought that thinks within you? What is the life that animates your body? What is the intelligence that heals your wounds, that beats your heart, that renews your strength while you sleep? That is not your personal creation. It is divine energy flowing through you. It is the same life that moves the planets, the same intelligence that designs the flowers, the same will that breathed the stars into being. You are not apart from this power. You are its expression. You are to infinite intelligence what a wave is to the ocean, individual in form, but one in substance. The wave may rise and fall, but the ocean remains. The man may live and die, but life itself never ceases. Death is but the retreat of form. Consciousness is eternal. The fear of death, therefore, is the final illusion to be conquered, for it is the shadow of ignorance. Once you realize that life cannot be destroyed, only transformed, you will laugh at the thought of death as a child laughs at an old tale of monsters. The Ethiopian texts say, "The wise man dieth not, he withdraweth." He withdraws his attention from one plane and directs it to another. That is all death is, a change of focus. You have shifted your attention countless times while living, moving from one thought to another, from one state of feeling to another. Death is the same movement upon a larger scale. The soul merely withdraws attention from the physical and continues its progress elsewhere. What then is there to fear? The realization that you are an eternal expression of divine will gives birth to perfect peace. You no longer live by struggle, but by law. You no longer see life as battle, but as unfoldment. You no longer chase purpose, you become it. You cease to ask, "What should I do?" and begin to declare, "I will express the highest that is within me." This realization also brings moral strength, for when man sees himself as a channel of the divine, he cannot dishonor himself with falsehood or vice. He knows that to degrade himself is to insult the infinite. The hand that carries creative power must be kept clean. The tongue that speaks for truth must be free from deceit. The man who knows his divine partnership walks with reverence, but not fear. He acts with confidence, but not pride. He gives without measure, for he knows the source of all abundance cannot fail. This is the secret of the saints and the sages. They understood that man's highest duty is to express the nature of God through the discipline of thought, speech, and deed. When Christ said, "I and my Father are one," he was not speaking of himself alone, but of every awakened soul. His words were the blueprint of mastery, not the claim of divinity denied to others. But men, blinded by fear, worshiped the example and forgot the lesson. They built temples to the messenger and ignored the message that the kingdom of heaven is within you, waiting to be claimed. The devil's last illusion is to make you believe that this truth is blasphemy. He will whisper, "It is pride to think yourself divine." Yet what greater pride could there be than to deny your source? What greater insult to your Creator than to say, "I am unworthy of his image"? Humility is not denial of divinity. It is the recognition that your divinity comes from God. The man who truly understands this no longer battles with life. He works with it. He becomes a master not through willpower alone, but through harmony with universal will. He is like the sailor who learns to ride the wind instead of fighting it. He understands that infinite intelligence is ever flowing, and that his task is simply to align his thought with its current. When he speaks, his words carry authority, for they are backed by the law. When he acts, his works endure, for they are rooted in harmony. When he prays, his prayer is answered before he finishes speaking, for the universe responds instantly to the mind in union with God. This is not miracle, but obedience of cause to its rightful master. The Ethiopian masters used to tell their students, when the river forgets the ocean, it becomes a pool. When man forgets God, he becomes small. The river regains its power only when it flows again into the sea. So it is with man. He regains his strength the moment he remembers his source. The final revelation is therefore not that God exists, but that you exist in God. Not that you are watched, but that you are expressed. Not that you must reach upward, but that you must awaken inward. Heaven and earth meet in your thought, and through you the law of creation continues. When I first grasped this truth, it shattered the last remnants of fear within me. I saw that I had never been alone, that infinite intelligence had guided every step, even those that seemed to lead through darkness. Every failure had been instruction, every sorrow purification, every trial a refining of faith. I saw that the universe was not against me, but working through me, shaping me into a conscious co-worker of the divine plan. And I understood, too, why fear had been allowed to exist. It was the shadow against which the light of understanding could reveal itself. Without it, man would never have sought wisdom. Fear was the teacher. Faith was the graduation. Once the lesson was learned, the shadow vanished. So now, at the end of this great journey of mind, let me speak plainly the truth that has been hidden in parable, poetry, and scripture since the beginning of time. Man is God's expression of will, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. You are the instrument through which infinite intelligence acts. Every thought of truth you hold, every deed of courage you perform, every act of creation you undertake, these are the movements of God through you. Do not mistake this for arrogance. The wave does not boast that it is the ocean. It rejoices that the ocean moves through it. So too should you rejoice that the infinite finds expression through your mind. When you understand this, all conflict ends. You cease to pray for strength, for you are strength. You cease to ask for wisdom, for you are wisdom in expression. You cease to seek peace, for you are peace embodied. You cease to beg for heaven, for you are heaven revealed. The man who knows this truth lives as a creator among creatures, a king among kings, a light among shadows. His thought is power, his word is law, his presence is peace. He walks through the world not in pride, but in quiet majesty. He does not compete, for he knows that all supply is infinite. He does not fear, for he knows that law never fails. He does not hate, for he knows that all discord is ignorance. He does not pray for miracles, for his life is one. The Ethiopian text describes such a man as the living flame. They say, "He who knoweth that he and the infinite are one mind cannot be quenched, for he burneth with eternal fire." That fire is faith organized into understanding. It is the light that no shadow can touch. Let this realization guide you each morning. I and the infinite are one mind. My thought is his will made visible. Speak it until you feel its truth vibrating in every breath. Walk with it as your secret armor. Act by it as your daily command. For this affirmation is not imagination, it is reality. The moment you live by it, fear dies forever. The moment you believe it, power awakens. The moment you act upon it, heaven becomes earth, and earth becomes heaven. You have walked from ignorance to knowledge, from doubt to faith, from bondage to mastery. You have seen that the devil was never a being but a habit of thought, that hell was never a place but a state of mind, and that heaven is the calm order of thought in harmony with divine law. You have discovered that the mind is the workshop of God, and that through its discipline, man becomes divine in expression. This is the final revelation. You are the thought of God thinking itself into form. You are not here to suffer, but to create, not to beg, but to command, not to be saved, but to express salvation through understanding. The law that governs the stars governs you. The mind that dreamed the universe dreams through you. The will that said, "Let there be light," speaks through your every decision. Now go forth and think as one who knows this. Walk as one who remembers it. Act as one who cannot forget it. For you are not seeking heaven, you are establishing it. You are not awaiting God's favor, you are revealing it. You are not separate from divine will, you are its living evidence. When mankind learns this truth collectively, the age of fear will end. There will be no more wars of creed or competition for wealth, for all will know that to injure another is to injure oneself, that to create for another is to create for all, and that love is the natural language of divine unity. The master mind of humanity will awaken, and the kingdom long spoken of will appear, not in clouds, but in consciousness. This is the destiny toward which every soul moves, from darkness to light, from division to unity, from fear to faith, from man to God. It is not a dream, but a certainty. It is the purpose for which all existence unfolds. So let the final affirmation be written not only on your lips, but upon your life. I and the infinite are one mind. My thought is his will made visible. Say it as you rise. Say it as you labor. Say it when the world trembles, and it will stand still before your calm. For this is the crown of all truth, the end of all fear, and the beginning of all power. And now you know, the kingdom of heaven was never to be found. It was to be remembered.